Jeffrey Hank is back with us on our AT&T line, an attorney, Hank Law, and he ran for Congress, and he is going to comment right now on whether or not pot, marijuana, grass, whatever you want to call it, should be legal in Michigan. Hey, welcome back to the program, Mr. Hank.
Hey, good morning, Michael. Thanks for having me.
How are things going? By the way, do you think you'll ever throw your helmet in the ring again and run for Congress?
We'll see, Michael. If the opportunity comes up, it's one of those things that if you got the bug in you, you're always looking at it. But as of now, no plans. I'm busy working on this because what we're doing is we're working on a ballot question to legalize marijuana and hemp in 2016. We think it's going to create 25,000 jobs. It's going to save the state of Michigan about $300 million in enforcement costs. And it's going to bring in at least $100 to $200 million in new revenue. And we have the money earmarked, 40% to go to road funding, 40% to the school aid fund, and 20% back to local governments. And when you start looking at those numbers, this is the last bastion of easy money that there is. It's tax that nobody really minds paying. In fact, cannabis consumers are begging for it to be legalized and to be taxed. You're not going to find anybody else out there doing that. So this is the last low-hanging fruit that we have, and it's something that I think people are no longer able to ignore.
Now, this is recreational use, not just medicinal, right?
Well, the plan that we have, which is the Michigan Comprehensive Cannabis Law Reform Initiative, sort of has three pillars, and that's to preserve and protect safe access to medical marijuana, to create a responsible and regulated system for adult use over 21, and then to permit the farming of industrial hemp. So the figures that I gave you are for an adult use market. They really don't include the numbers from industrial hemp because it's very hard to forecast economically what that market will be. But one of the reasons we want to comprehensively reform cannabis laws, the hemp market has nothing to do with people smoking marijuana or getting high. Products can be made from everything from ethanol and biofuels to hempcrete, which is used in buildings, to I heard of an entrepreneur a few weeks ago talking about making hemp bedbug resistant bedding, because apparently hemp used to be used in animal bedding because it was pest resistant. So right now, entrepreneurs who might want to be able to develop those products or engage in that kind of scientific research have their hands tied by our laws. So overall, I think people are looking forward to modernizing these laws, and that's what we're working to do to give the voters an opportunity to have a chance to do that.
It's interesting. If I'm not mistaken, the Attorney General is probably the most prominent person in the state against what you're trying to do. But by putting it to the people, he'll have really no say beyond the day that everybody decides to vote.
That's right. I mean, I think most politicians, unfortunately, are just not up to speed on this issue. I mean, if you talk to them privately, they're a little more likely to say yes, they support it, but they don't seem to be taking the leadership on it. And you've heard that there's possibly 3 or 4 different ballot groups forming to do this, and people across the political spectrum saying it's time. So most politicians are a little bit behind the people. We think if we put this before the people, it'll be passed. But I think you're also seeing the political consciousness, even in the legislature and amongst the Attorney General and others that may presume to be opponents, changing, because a lot of the stereotypes and beliefs that people had are sort of melting away in the face of new information and new science and some of the things we're learning, like the fact that marijuana is much safer than alcohol, for example. So those attitudes are changing. So you never know where we might be another year or two from now.
As an attorney, I'm glad you brought that up. You deal with DUI cases and so forth, the minor in possession and the rest of it. How would, for instance, if you're pulled over for weaving, would the officer somehow be able to test marijuana use in the way that they test alcohol use at the roadside?
No, and this is one of the toughest issues to deal with. And we've been talking to police officers and prosecutors and others about this. There is no sort of test that can be done at this point similar to alcohol. And there are blood alcohol levels, obviously, when you're drinking, and there are nanogram levels in your blood when you've been consuming THC, which is the active cannabinoid in marijuana that typically makes people impaired, if you will. And there is no easy way to do that, and there is no standard, whereas alcohol is fairly uniform. If you're at 0.08 or 0.1, we know you're likely to be impaired. Your motor functions will be, disabled, things like that. But with marijuana, it's not the same. You could have someone who has an extraordinarily high blood level and not be impaired, and you could have someone who has a very low level and be impaired and should never be behind the wheel. So this is a problem, and there is no easy solution right now. So, the things that we're looking at are, drug detection officers and field sobriety tests and those kind of traditional police work that's going to have to be done. But what I like to say about that issue, Michael, is that this is already an issue that's happening right now. I mean, people are consuming marijuana and driving on the road. Police are having to deal with this. So it's not really a new issue. You are seeing the development of new roadside testing that over the next few years, particularly if states legalize, I think you're more likely to start seeing those devices in the hands of police that may make the situation easier.
Couldn't the officer just look on the front seat and see if there's a big bag of Cheetos and a box of brownies? Wouldn't that be the tip?
Maybe, that's one of those things, good police work.
We'll keep in close touch with Jeffrey Hank